Happy Friday, folks. Senior editor Mackenzie Taylor here on the Texan's weekly Roundup podcast. This week, the team discusses Operation Lone Star, arresting over 300,000 illegal immigrants since March 2021. Senate Democrats pulling a big tech and journalism bill after an amendment was passed. Texas House Republicans' letter to the Secretary of Education over Title IX. Amarillo approving new debt to fund its Civic Center without voter approval. The Dallas City Council debating how to staff a new city government office. A frenzied Frisco ISD board meeting over bathroom policy and gun storage. Dan Patrick's campaign responding to criticism of the lieutenant governor's former investments. Governor Abbott's strong words in defense of Texas's abortion law. Myra Flores, Democrat opponent, claiming she stole her election. And a lawsuit against Texas A&M over claims of racial discrimination against white and Asian men. As always, if you have questions for our team, DM us on Twitter or email us at editor@thetexan.news. We'd love to answer your questions on a future podcast. Thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Oh, howdy, folks. It's Mackenzie here with Brad, Hayden, and Hudson. We just tried to record. It failed, and it was a very anticlimactic moment. We've recovered, I think, which is good.
Well, now that you're mentioning it, we haven't. So you're bringing it up.
Brad, why do you do this?
I had to get back at you somehow.
For what?
For everything.
Okay, fair.
Oh, I thought you meant the other day when she jumped out at you in the hallway.
Oh, it's part of everything.
Oh.
That
Should
applies.
we tweet that out? Well, no, because you do
because
something not nice.
Yes, I did. After you did something not nice.
I think I said that it was the equivalent of, what did I say it was the equivalent of?
That was the dumbest comparison you made.
One could argue Brad's response was proportional. But
see, when Hayden goes against me, I feel very convicted because Hayden isn't always on y'all's team because y'all are always together. And Hayden sometimes comes over to my side. So if Hayden says, "Hey, Mac, you might be wrong here."
Well, I really have been a victim of jump scare related terrorism in this office. So I empathize with Brad's position. Except I was holding a cup of hot coffee when it happened. Yeah. So that caused a disaster.
Yeah. That's a great video. That was my favorite video that I've ever seen of us in this office.
I'm just giving Mac a hard time. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah. I thought it was I was like, boo. I could have gone like guttural scream and I didn't do that. I don't remember. I had something I wanted to talk to you guys at the front of the podcast. Now I can't remember what it was.
Podcast.
Hayden. Yes. If Hayden were to start a podcast, what would we call it, Brad?
We would call it, no, this is rough and I'm workshopping it, but what sparks discussion?
Why would you call it that? Maybe because it's hosted by Hayden Sparks?
Yes. And it was sparked in my mind by our fun topic that Hayden suggested. And that would be a topic for his discussion podcast.
I got it.
I'm envisioning him just rambling on for 2 straight hours with no response. Just him.
I don't know if I
consciousness.
Yeah, I don't know if I could find 2 hours worth of things to talk about by myself. I would get bored with listening to my own voice.
But in that imaginary space, I picture him like smoking a pipe with his feet up on an ottoman and the mic and like an easy
next to a fireplace like Dennis Prager.
100%.
Wearing a cardigan.
Which y'all believe me if I said that I did wear a cardigan in high school for a brief time.
I would actually believe that, yes.
I got rid of it after enough people made fun of me, but
Hudson,
it was funny.
You're making too much noise.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Your mic picks up everything.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I'm having a protein bar.
There you go. Okay, folks.
I feel the need to clarify that it was a protein bar.
You must be loving it because you are in the zone.
It is like
it
is like rule number 1 to not. We should probably just keep this in at this point. At this point, it's like rule number 1 not to eat on the pod. But I don't think we ever told you that rule, so that's okay.
I was never told that.
That's okay. We will just going forward not eat RX bars on the pod. Once what did I eat on the pod that made Sarah back in the day really mad at me? I can't remember. It's really only bad if you have these on because it's like mouth noises like crazy.
Gotcha.
Anyways, podcast delightful things. Hudson, welcome to the team. We're sorry we all snapped at you like we were rude patrons at a diner. Oh, man. Okay, well, in order to get to the fun topic that Hayden has outlined for us so graciously, let's get right into the news. And Hayden, we will start with you. What are the latest statistics for Operation Lone Star provided by the governor's office?
It's hard to believe it's been so long since Operation Lone Star was launched, but it was March of last year that Abbott sent down state troopers and National Guardsmen, and then there were other states that chipped in as well. But he's been releasing on a weekly basis some of the updated stats, and we recently crossed a new milestone for arrests of illegal immigrants. 302,600 illegal immigrants have been taken into custody and transferred to federal authorities for processing in the federal immigration system. And there have also been 19,700 arrests of accused criminals and 17,200 felony charges filed against those suspects. And there have been 340.5 million deadly doses of fentanyl confiscated along the southern border since the launch of Operation Lone Star. And fentanyl has been a increasingly worsening problem in the state of Texas. Before, Texas was a pass-through state for this narcotic, but beginning a few months after Operation Lone Star began, DPS and the governor began sounding the alarm about this incredibly lethal drug. A deadly dose, I believe, is 2 milligrams. A very small amount of fentanyl can kill someone easily, and there have been anecdotally just several stories just in recent memory of high school students here in the Austin area being killed by this very potent drug. So 340.5 million deadly overdoses of fentanyl have been confiscated just by the state of Texas via Operation Lone Star, which is just astonishing. That's the population of the whole country. And illegal immigration is certainly linked to that. So those are some of the updated statistics from Operation Lone Star. Abbott has also announced a $5,000 reward for tips leading to the disruption of stash houses. And that is becoming also being emphasized by the governor.
Wow. So what are some of the objections that have been raised against Operation Lone Star?
The critics of Operation Lone Star are a panoply of lawyers and interest groups and really everyday people who view this as more of a publicity stunt and something that Abbott is doing to gain favor with the staunchest Republican voters who he needs to turn out for him in November. And his Democratic opponent, Beto O'Rourke, has certainly made that criticism multiple times. But last month, the American Civil Liberties Union of Texas authored a letter to the civil rights arm of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, encouraging them to shut this down, more or less, because in their view, Operation Lone Star is an encroachment on what is a federal responsibility to enforce immigration statutes. And even though there have been 1.8 million plus apprehensions by border guards of accused illegal immigrants, the efforts that the state is taking, the ACLU believes are not respecting the dignity of these people by putting them in conditions that are dangerous to their health, that could contribute to heat exhaustion. They cited an example of a group of people waiting outside in the heat for several hours while they were waiting to be transferred from state custody to federal custody. And the ACLU also pointed out that some of the standards of care and some of the standards of professionalism that federal authorities are required to obey may not translate to state authorities obeying them simply because they're participating in federal enforcement. So the ACLU is asking that DHS stop cooperating with Operation Lone Star. That's a flavor of some of the criticisms that have gone forward, and the operation is also reportedly the subject of a federal investigation as well.
Wow. Well, Hayden, thank you for that. Bradley, let's talk. A bill in the U.S. Senate was pulled by Democrats after an amendment was passed that prohibits censorship in media organizations. Give us the details.
So Senate Democrats and Republicans had been working on a compromise bill that would allow certain news organizations to effectively collectively bargain with each other over how their content may be distributed and at what price they would be paid with tech companies. It was applied to media organizations of 1,500 employees or fewer, and it doesn't include, a place like the New York Times or the Washington Post, which basically get whatever they want because they're very large news organizations. The social media and other tech companies like Google pay them quite a bit. The bill would create a 4-year safe harbor window from antitrust laws. And the purpose is to allow these smaller media companies to get paid better for the product they provide. There's a lot of struggling companies out there that's been in the news quite a bit. The New York Times and the Washington Post and those giants have kind of saturated the market with their own product. They have overtaken much of the media customer base out there. And so this is something that the U.S. Senate is trying to do to allow smaller organizations to try and find a leg up.
There you go. So, sorry, keep going.
I was going to say, that's the reasoning. After Ted Cruz's amendment passed in the Judiciary Committee, Senator Amy Klobuchar pulled the bill, and that amendment was passed because John Ossoff had been out with COVID and did not designate a proxy. That's a procedure that Congress implemented during COVID to allow members who were sick with COVID to vote on things so they could actually pass things. And he did not designate a proxy. And there were multiple other, I watched the video, there were multiple other senators that had designated a proxy, and he was the one that hadn't. And therefore, Republicans had one more vote, the Democrats. And so they passed this amendment onto the bill.
Interesting. Okay, so tell us about the amendment.
So it stated that during these negotiations allowed by the bill that creates an exemption from antitrust law, the two parties cannot discuss content moderation, only revenue from ads or whatever else. Senator Cruz said of it, the topic of discussion when these two sides get together can't be censorship. It should be ad revenues. During discussion on it, Senator John Kennedy, the main Republican working on the bill with Democrats, said this amendment is making explicit what I thought was implicit. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know. On the flip side, Klobuchar objected, saying the amendment essentially gives platforms a get-out-of-jail-free card by presenting an obvious opportunity for gamesmanship in the negotiation. Since news outlets depend on the antitrust exemption while the covered platforms do not, the platforms could then raise content moderation at the first opportunity in an attempt to avoid the joint negotiations. But regardless, this is an attempt to prevent Google, Twitter, Facebook from saying during these revenue negotiations that sure, we'll give you what you want payment wise, but you can't publish anything critical of X person, or you can't publish anything about Y issue, things like that. And so that's the attempt. Obviously, Republicans and Democrats are divided on how it would actually play out in that case. That's not going to go away, but the bill now goes back to the drawing board. And I'm not really sure how it's going to end up, but it is something that both Republicans and Democrats want to pass. And Cruz himself he had concerns about the bill, but overall he was supportive of the spirit of it. So maybe they'll be able to come up with some sort of compromise.
There you go. Well, thank you, Bradley. Hudson, we have a story from you this week. You were able to break it, and specifically relating to Texas Republicans criticizing some Title IX developments. Tell us about what they are asking the Biden administration to do.
Yeah. So Representatives Harrison and Swanson sent a letter in response to the proposed change to Title IX that the Department of Education announced this summer. We are currently in the public comment period, so Representatives Harris and Swanson want to voice their opposition prior to the rule taking effect. So the rule itself is over 700 pages long.
Oof.
Yeah, and adds an entirely new interpretation of Title IX, which was originally meant to prevent sex-based discrimination, and that was presumably based on the basis of biological sex as it was passed in the early 70s. The most notable change comes from the reinterpretation of that word, sex, and under this proposed rule, sexual orientation and gender identity will be included in that definition.
So why do the representatives take issue with this portion of the rule change?
Yeah, they claim that it is a way to backdoor transgender involvement in women's sports. Talking to Brian Harrison, he told me if a biological man identifying as a woman wanted to play on a women's sports team and were barred from participating, the school could be held accountable for sexual harassment under this rule. He also told me that he believes that this is an effort by the Biden administration to preempt state laws that prevent biological men from participating in women's sports. He spoke specifically of the recent Texas law, House Bill 25, the Save Girls Sports Act, authored by his co-signer on the letter, Representative Valerie Swanson.
Is there any way to stop this rule from taking effect?
Well, they have limited means available from preventing it from going into effect eventually. But because they sent this letter, the administration has to consider the opposition as we are in the public comment period. A group of states have already filed suit against the proposed change, and Harrison was clear that if the change was finalized, Texas may do the same. He finished our conversation saying, "This is unconstitutional, illegal, and states like Texas need to fight back. We must defend women and we must defend federalism." So as a side note, like I said, this is a 700-page rule, and I haven't even been able to look through all of the proposed changes. And there's so many different things that are changing as a result of this new amendment. There's different ways they're going to be having Title IX hearings and the overall structure of the law. And from the things that I can read, just both from the left and the right, it's going to do a lot to change the way that Title IX works in our school systems. So this will be an interesting topic to look further into in the coming weeks and as it continues to receive opposition and comment.
Well, thank you, Hudson, for covering that for us. Bradley, we're coming back to you. A financing mover used by the city of Amarillo became the subject of a very fiery House committee hearing last week. Talk to us about the backstory.
So in 2020, Amarillo voters rejected by a wide margin a $275 million bond proposal to renovate the city's civic center and relocate City Hall. On that ground that City Hall is currently, they would have some of the expansion of the civic center. And so it was kind of a two-move maneuver there. But rather than wait or scrap the project after the proposal was rejected, this year, the city approved a $260 million tax anticipation note, a mechanism of debt issuance that does not have to be approved by voters. TANs are meant to be like a bridge loan, an injection of funding to bridge the gap between times of incoming revenue. Usually, they are paid off 2, 3, 4 months at a time rather than spread out over 30 years like other mechanisms of debt we see. The city's intention was to issue the TAN, then refinance the debt with a long-term refunding bond or a certificate of obligation, which can be used as a refunding bond. But neither of those require voter approval. So this is an entire end around what the voters decided to do in 2020, and the city is moving ahead with this project, or trying to. Apparently, when they went to the bank that agreed to loan them the money for this TAN, they were asking for upwards of $500 million.
Oof.
And that is more than double what the original bond proposal was in 2020. And so that's the backstory of this situation. And
still without voter approval.
Still without voter approval.
Yeah.
So it was not received very well in the House committee hearing when they were told.
And it's become pretty controversial up in the Panhandle too, and they're even resulted in a lawsuit, correct?
Yep. So Amarillo businessman Alex Fairley, who testified before the House telling them of this situation, he has poured nearly $500,000 of his own money into a legal fight with the city over it. He alleges that the city neither provided sufficient public notice of the bond nor adhered to the spirit of the TAN law. In the article, I cite what the law says in there that this can be used for. There's a trial early next month on this case. I hope to be there. That would be very interesting to follow. But during the proceedings, the city tried to force Fairley to pay a $6 million surety bond, which is basically he would have to fork over the $6 million. And I guess as like collateral for if his legal challenge fails. And the reason that the city tried to make him pay that was their justification was that of the increased costs that they have incurred on the project while this lawsuit has put a hold on it. And the judge swiftly swatted that attempt away from the city. But this is, I think, probably going on month two or three of this legal fight. It's out in Amarillo. It's at a district court there. But yeah, in early October, the two sides will make their cases to the bench.
So talk to us. You talked briefly about it. Speak to us about it again. What did the legislators say about Fairley's testimony?
Put simply, they were outraged. State Rep Jim Murphy of Houston said, "I recall hearing this story last May from one of my colleagues, and I sort of thought, no, that's preposterous. I'm sure that's not what occurred." And then he said, "But it's that and more." State Rep Hugh Shine said, "To me, there's all kinds of red flags that go up on this deal. And my message to any municipality out there that's thinking of pulling this stunt, I think they better be on guard because that's something the Attorney General's office would be on top of pretty quick, I would think."
Absolutely.
Then Chair Morgan Myers said Amarillo officials tried to exploit a loophole and tried to go around a law that was passed and signed by the governor to explicitly make sure the voters had a say, and that cannot stand. He also added that the legislature would close the loophole next session when they reconvene in January. We saw non-voter approved debt be kind of revamped, or the law that allows it revamped last year during the legislative session. But you know, when you think you fixed one thing, another one pops up.
Always.
And so this is, if Meyer has his way, and he is a fairly powerful member of the legislature, this will be brought up and some sort of reform to it will likely be passed. Fairley also testified this week in front of the Senate, a Senate committee hearing with Senator Paul Betancourt. So it's both chambers that are outraged about this, and this is going to continue to be something they discuss and deliberate on.
Thank you, Bradley. Hayden, let's talk about Dan Patrick. Let's move over to the Senate here. What were some of the claims of the Texas Monthly piece that drew the Dan Patrick campaign's ire?
Texas Monthly put out a... Well, Texas Monthly has a unique style. Anyone who's read a Texas Monthly piece knows that they it's not necessarily straight-laced, straightforward. They add a little bit of personality to it. And so this piece was definitely came off as a criticism of Dan Patrick, but it was going over the fact that he had investments in BlackRock, which is really, I think, the largest investment firm in the world. And it had run afoul of SB 13, a new state law that seeks to more or less keep the state from shooting itself in the foot by putting its pension dollars in investments that target the Texas oil and gas industry. And I'll invite Brad to chime in if my interpretation of this is correct, but the state under this new law is not supposed to invest in companies that boycott energy companies and adopt an investment philosophy that only invests in things like renewables instead of oil and gas. And this bill received bipartisan support because that's a major part of the state's economy. And it would be suicidal from an economic perspective for the state to adopt that philosophy from an investment perspective. So it is. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a broad response to the ESG movement that we've discussed quite a bit, which is broadly trying to funnel capital from in the energy industry from like fossil fuels, more traditional uses or companies, to renewables, and that has kind of spun off into social issues as well. But this is a response by the state to try and use the market power that it does have with its own pensions, which are pretty large, to reverse course on that.
Mm-hmm. And this it doesn't keep private individuals or even elected officials from having personal investments. Right. So Texas Monthly wasn't accusing Patrick of breaking the law, but they were accusing him of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, yeah. Because in January, he asked the Comptroller of Public Accounts, Glenn Hagar, to put BlackRock on the banned list of investment firms at the top of the list. Right, at the top of the list, because I think he said it was the biggest offender or something to that effect. They are the poster child for this whole thing. Yeah. So he really was knocking BlackRock, and right around this time is when, well, I'll get to that in a second, but that's the bones of this Texas Monthly piece. They accused him or pointed out that he owned shares in this company after SB 13 was passed, and up until he asked Glenn Hagar to put them at the top of the list. So that's what Texas Monthly pointed out, and that's what provoked a response.
So talk to us about the responses of Patrick's team.
Well, there were a few factual things that they claimed were off in Texas Monthly's coverage. But Alan Blakemore, Patrick's chief strategist, commented, quote, "Lieutenant Governor Patrick did not make a decision to buy BlackRock. He depends on his investment advisors who made the BlackRock investments before SB 13 was passed," end quote. So he's seeking to add some distance between Patrick and this decision. In other words, he's trying to say Patrick didn't personally handpick these investments while he was considering SB 13, but this is something his team did on his behalf. So not exactly denying that he did it.
And there are a lot of people in the world that have money tied up in BlackRock because it's the largest portfolio manager in the world.
Yeah.
And like literally tens of trillions of dollars they manage. So, it's a popular thing to put money in for these portfolio managers because they see a return on investment.
And there are probably other lawmakers that have money in BlackRock.
I'm sure there are. Yeah. Whether they know it or not.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Because and that's a fair point that he's saying that these are decisions that are made for him. But he also seemed to resist the characterization that Patrick was being hypocritical. Blakemore asserted that he didn't keep the shares, as Texas Monthly said, but he also said that they were sold in late January and SB 13 was signed into law in June. But January is when Patrick began calling for BlackRock to be placed on the top of the list of banned investment firms. And so Blakemore said, quote, "When you set out to write a hit piece, journalistic standards be damned, a freshman journalism student would expect to get an F on the assignment," end quote. And then there was some quibbling about the value of the shares. He said that Texas Monthly inflated the value of them. I don't know a whole lot about investing, but I imagine that's not something you can necessarily pin down exactly how much a share is worth until it's sold.
It's fluctuating, right?
It's always changing. Like you can't say, you lied about how much my house was worth unless it was, grossly inflated, which is what Blakemore was saying that Texas Monthly did. So I suppose that would be up to a specialist in the market to be able to decide that. But Texas Monthly did update its piece with an editor's note, and part of that stated, quote, "We have updated the story to reflect new information, including details about some of Patrick's holdings in BlackRock shares and mutual funds and when he sold them. There were no factual errors in the original story that required correction," end quote. A couple months out from a general election, this piece probably made the Patrick team a little bit flustered, pointing out something that is an uncomfortable fact for Patrick, given how much he's argued against BlackRock and these investments that could hurt the Texas oil and gas industry. But he's facing Mike Collier in the general election, and that's still a couple months away.
Well, thank you, Hayden, for that coverage. Hey listeners, if you enjoy listening to Texas news without the spin on our podcast each week, consider subscribing to the Texan. We're not funded by big donors or corporate interests, so we rely on the subscriptions of everyday Texans to keep churning out news. When you subscribe to the Texan, you'll get access to stories, like all the ones we've been chatting about, as soon as they're published, so that you can stay informed, up to speed, and ready to vote at the ballot box. A subscription is $9 monthly, but you can save by purchasing an annual subscription for $90, which comes out to just $7.50 per month. And right now, we're running a promotion. New subscribers will get a free long-sleeve t-shirt with this snazzy John Steinbeck quote. Texas is a state of mind. Texas is an obsession. Above all, Texas is a nation in every sense of the word. For more details, visit thetexan.news/subscribe or click the URL in the description of this podcast. Now back to more stories from this week. Brad, you watched a heated school board meeting up in Frisco ISD this week. What happened?
So it was the first, or I think it was the first, or it was one of the first board meetings with new members, Stephanie Elad and Marvin Lowe. They are two conservatives who unseated incumbents by campaigning against critical race theory, school masks /closures, and gender /sexual curriculum and materials. We saw a huge trend in Texas with that. And so these were two of those candidates that managed to do that. And they kind of threw a wrench into the gears of the school board meeting. They early and often pressed the school officials that were talking about issues and objected to things. It was just overall kind of an interruption of the status quo, I'm sure. There were also a lot of people there because of various items that were on this agenda. So the three big topics were the school's gender bathroom policy, a review of the sexually explicit books found in libraries and the policy of analyzing those and maybe removing them, and a proposed gun storage notice. One of those is not really like the others, but those were the things that kind of brought out quite a bit of controversy and is a reason why the audience was so packed. And when listening to it, you could hear applause and jeers constantly on this stuff. It was definitely an interesting event to at least witness from afar, since I just watched it on video instead of being there. But there's a lot of conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to us specifically about the bathroom policy.
Yeah, so I go into all this stuff, and there were a few more that I talk about in the piece. So if you want to hear a full rundown, go read that. But on this thing specifically, this probably took up the most airtime, I would say. They said, the school board said that the district's current policy is that students use bathrooms according to their biological sex. And if a case arises of a student feeling uncomfortable with that, the school will work with the parents to find a solution, which they said repeatedly was usually they use the nurse's bathroom, which is a single entry bathroom. The item was brought up because the Biden administration is currently considering a reversion back to the Obama-era Department of Education policy that schools must allow students to use whichever gendered bathroom they prefer. And actually, they're threatening school lunch aid if they do for the schools if they do not abide by that policy. That is currently tied up in the courts. But this was just a discussion. Here, the board heard from their legal counsel about what the law actually states and what kind of policy they can approve under federal law. No decision was made, but there was a lot of testimony about it on this issue.
Talk to us about the gun storage notice.
So this was controversial right off the bat with when it was discovered in the agenda, with some seeing it as an attempt by the school to compile an informal gun registry. The board's drafted resolution read, the Frisco ISD board further directs the superintendent to develop a form or modify an existing form for the purpose of soliciting acknowledgement of state law and the availability of resources regarding safe gun storage practices from parents in Frisco ISD. This was a response to what happened in Uvalde, and it caught a lot of fire, a lot of flack on social media. I asked board president Renee Archambault about this on Monday afternoon, and she told me that they were not trying to create a gun registry and said that the form would be modeled after one that Houston ISD uses. I have that in the article. You can see what it looks like. It has a place for a parent's signature, but it doesn't say anywhere, tell us if you have guns. Now, the counter argument would be just doing this would create kind of an informal acknowledgement by people that rejected this form that they had guns. Ultimately, the resolution was passed with an amendment that added the language after what I just read that says the form shall clearly state that Frisco ISD is not requesting any information from any parents, including whether any parent owns a firearm or how many firearms are stored, and that a parent's acknowledgement of the statute and availability of resources shall not be construed to mean that the parent owns a firearm. Both Elad and Lowe voted against the resolution despite the amendment. It passed, though, 4-2. That was a consistent theme in the meeting.
Well, Brad, thanks for covering something that's not usually your beat, but you just got
it was
into
off
this
the
week.
Beaten path, as it were.
I swear. Hayden, let's talk about Dallas. What are some of the elements of the city's budget proposal?
The contrasting facial expressions from Mac and Brad were just amusing to watch.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, Mac. What was your question again?
I was just asking, what, Hayden, are some of the elements of the Dallas budget proposal?
It just randomly came to mind.
It just came to mind.
Let's talk about Dallas budget. Okay.
Great.
Every year, the city manager submits a draft to the city council. It's the comprehensive Dallas budget proposal for them to consider. This $1.45 billion document includes additional funding for the police department, which had been cut by a little bit after the 2020 riots and protests in downtown. They cut the police overtime budget, if you'll recall, but now the proposed budget has approximately $45 million, an increase in the police budget from last year, and it's increased by nearly $100 million from 2020. So we've well surpassed in Dallas the police budget when there were talks of cutting or defunding the Dallas Police Department. So that as an issue has been eclipsed, numerically speaking. But the budget also includes a slight decrease in the property tax rate of 2.75 cents, but there will still be there will still be an increase in the amount of property tax collected by about $132 million due to increased evaluations. So the property tax rate is decreasing, but not the amount that they are collecting, and the police force is receiving plenty of more funding. But they also debated a newer office in the city, at City Hall that has been formed just this year.
Awesome. So what were city council members' thoughts on the new Inspector General's office?
Earlier this year, the city of Dallas unveiled its Inspector General's office after it was created last December by the city council, and Bart Bevers, an attorney, became the first individual to lead that office. He is now requesting an additional 6 staff members. He claims that he's been overwhelmed with reports and requests to investigate accused misconduct by city employees, things like sexual harassment, things like embezzlement of funds, the full range of misconduct that could be reported. And previously, this was handled directly by the city attorney, and it was creating problems because there was really no mechanism for this specific issue to be handled. And now that there is an Inspector General's office, it has a budget of $1.7 million, and the city council was debating whether his staff should be increased and whether the office is growing too quickly. In recent memory, some of the cases that sparked the need for this, I can't believe I just said that, sparked the need. Some of the events that spurred.
I can't believe it's taken you this long to start using your name as a pun.
Hayden, how long have you been here? Like 2.5
years almost.
And I don't think that joke really has made its way into these halls until this week.
Yeah, somebody proposed it in a headline and it just came to mind.
Yeah.
So, but former councilman Dwayne Caraway just got out of prison earlier this year after the feds cut his prison sentence for corruption short. And that is still fresh in the minds of Dallas leaders. There have also been other corruption cases in the city of Dallas that have spurred the need for deeper investigation into complaints of corruption. The city council is set to vote on its budget on Wednesday, September 21st, although they did take a straw poll and vote in favor of their budget. They shuffled some money around, but they didn't defund the inspector general's office, although the mayor reportedly he wasn't necessarily pleased that they were tinkering with this office's budget anyway. They withdrew some funds and then took some money from the pension fund and put it back into the inspector general's office. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, it was weird. They had something like a few $100,000 that they wanted to remove from that office, but then they replaced it so that I believe it was a wash in the end.
Okay. Yeah, there's pension funds are used quite a bit as like slush funds. Especially with these governmental entities. Now, if it got all back replaced, then that's one thing, but it's just very odd how they're kind of used as like credit cards.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's what they did because they wanted to fund more local community prosecutions of code violations and that type of thing. So they that's what they were wanting the inspector general funds for. And so they just did a merry-go-round with the money, and which is strange to me. I don't understand how all that works and why they're able to do that and why they didn't just increase or decrease it. I am still a little bit green with understanding all the city financing stuff and how they balance their budgets and how that's even legal for them to take money out of a pension fund to use it for something different. But the question will be if the city council gives a final stamp of approval, and it's not a given. After the fight over police funding, there were several council members that were still upset with the budget even as they took the final vote. So that's a question that will be resolved on the 21st.
There you go. Hayden, thank you so much for that coverage. Bradley, we are just pinging back and forth between Brad and Hayden today because Hudson has been working on one story in particular this week that took a lot of time. So he has not published as much as usual, but folks, keep an eye out. We have a really great story come from Hudson about a migrant center in San Antonio. I'm just plugging it now ahead of time. We'll see when it actually publishes, but it's a great story.
Should be a good one.
I'm excited about it. Anyway, let's go back to Brad here. Governor Abbott issued one of his most straightforward and firm defenses of Texas's abortion law this week. What did he say?
When asked by a reporter about the various laws, there's 3 separate segments of them on the books. Abbott said, an abortion is taking the life of a baby, and our goal in passing the laws that were passed is to protect the lives of those babies. This is notable because while Abbott he's certainly defended the laws before, but he hasn't been so firm in defense when pressed before by a reporter.
So if it was taking an extra step, he wouldn't be this adamant.
Yeah, I mean, he would he would talk about technicalities of law, is is it 6 weeks, is it whatever, but this was hand or fist slamming the table, prepared response,
ready to go.
Yes, and that's why it was so notable and took a lot of people, I wouldn't say shockingly, but they were surprised. It was not something that was expected. But when this video made the rounds, that got a lot of attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to us about an example of when Abbott has, defended the laws before, but maybe not been this adamant.
Yeah. So asked recently about exceptions for rape and incest, Abbott said those victims can access healthcare immediately. And by accessing that healthcare immediately, they can get the Plan B pill that can prevent a pregnancy from occurring in the first place. I think it's important to note that is exactly the protocol that women who are raped are told to pursue. You get medical help immediately for injuries, let alone if they are unfortunately impregnated during that. But the Plan B pill is not an abortion. It prevents the inception from happening, as far as I understand, as best I understand it. But that is, that is not like an absurd response. It just, when they're talking about the laws themselves, it is easy to pull out and make kind of lampoon it, which is what happened by the media and Abbott's critics about the laws not having exceptions for rape and incest. The other instance occurred last September with the same premise on rape and incest exceptions. Abbott said, rape is a crime, and Texas will work tirelessly to make sure that we eliminate all rapists from the streets of Texas by aggressively going out, arresting, prosecuting them, and getting them off the streets. Goal number 1 is to eliminate rape so that no woman, no person will be a victim of rape. That also was, that's a very standard, law and order type of response about a crime. But that was taken and run with by his critics and the media, saying that that's the only thing. That's Abbott's response to women who get raped or some other crime. And so he said that after he mentioned that they were talking about the heartbeat bill, which prohibits an abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected, which is roughly 6 weeks, but it can vary. So he was saying that it didn't make abortion illegal entirely. It's up to the fetal heartbeat detection they can get an abortion. So that is just a much different kind of statement or response than Abbott delivered this week. And it was a lot less firm in the principle of why he believes what he believes, why Republicans passed the laws they did. But after getting lampooned in the media and really hit hard on this issue since Roe v. Wade was overturned, we're now seeing the governor formulate and solidify his messaging on this issue, which really has risen to the top. May not be the tip-top issue, but it's definitely top 3. Or even with a couple others like the border or the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brad, thanks for following that for us. Hayden, let's chat with you. A Democratic congressman made an interesting claim at a campaign event in Brownsville. What were Vicente Gonzalez's comments about his Republican opponent?
Congressman Gonzalez was with another congressman from California, Adam Schiff, who is incidentally the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. And Fox News reported that Gonzalez made an interesting remark that sounded a little bit familiar, but not from a Democrat. He accused Mayra Flores, who recently won a special election in the 34th Congressional District, that she stole her election with her financial support. That was the nature of the criticism. He didn't accuse her of ballot fraud, but he did accuse her and her supporters of stealing the election because they were outraised and outfunded. According to Fox News, this was Gonzalez's comment, quote, "They stole the last election. They spent $3 million to our $250,000. They campaigned for 2 years, and they still only won by less than 1%. So the way to turn this around is getting out and vote," end quote. Flores responded to this on Twitter as well. She said, quote, "The far left is getting pretty desperate when Adam Schiff is coming down to Texas to save Vicente Gonzalez. The swamp is protecting one of its own," end quote. So an interesting remark by a Democrat. President Trump obviously has been beating the drum of his election being stolen since 2020. His campaign wasn't able to prove that in court, clearly, but they have. He's been roundly criticized, and Republicans have been criticized for making claims of election stealing. So it's interesting to hear that from a Democrat.
Certainly, at least in recent memory.
Right.
Why are 2 incumbent members of Congress running against each other?
Well, the Texas legislature redrew the 34th Congressional District to include Gonzalez and Flores. Flores became upset, her Democratic opponents in the special election, after she ran to replace Congressman Filemon Vela, who resigned suddenly in March to go work for a law firm, and the district is redrawn so that it is a bit more more favorable to the Democratic Party. So Flores is facing an uphill battle in her election against Gonzalez. But if the Democrat had won, this would be a competition between two Democrats. I don't think the legislature expected necessarily for this to end up being a face-off between a Republican and a Democrat, because it seems the way it was drawn was to pit two Democrats against each other, because the 34th district has historically been a Democratic district. But now you have a special election that put a Republican in this seat, and South Texas is trending red, so it is possible that she could win, but it's definitely Gonzalez's race to lose.
Certainly.
I would say.
Thank you so much, Hayden. Hudson, last but certainly not least, we got a spicy higher ed story here. Who is suing Texas A&M, and what are they alleging?
Dr. Richard Lowry, a finance professor at the University of Texas, is suing the Texas A&M Board of Regents and two VPs who sent a letter announcing a Texas A&M program that sets aside professor positions to underrepresented minority groups, as they say it. In the lawsuit, his attorneys allege that the Accountability, Climate, Equity, and Scholarship Fellowship Program violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So this aspect of the law prohibits racial discrimination in any program that receives federal funding. The fellowship program seeks to hire professors from these underrepresented groups and gives them salary matches up to $100,000. And Lowry is being represented by a group called America First Legal, which is led by former Trump advisor Stephen Miller.
Ooh. Who does A&M consider to be underrepresented minority groups, and why did the university pursue this program?
So in the letter to the staff announcing the fellowship program this summer, the VPs write, Texas A&M defines URMs as African Americans, Hispanic, Latino Americans, Native Americans, Alaskan Natives, and Native Hawaiians. Asian Americans are excluded from this list. They claim that they pursued this policy because they want to increase the presence of faculty of color, and that doing so would increase the quality of education for all students. Additionally, they claim because the university was recognized as a Hispanic serving institution, they are charged with increasing opportunities for Hispanic students to interact and engage with faculty who share their ethnic and cultural background, as they say it in the letter. It is very interesting to note that Texas A&M faculty is 54% white and only 7% Hispanic and 4% Black. However, people of Asian descent are not included on this list of underrepresented minority groups, but only make up 8.4% of the faculty population. So this program represents ultimately another challenge to affirmative action, which has been an incredibly controversial topic since its inception. In the press release on the lawsuit, AFL President Stephen Miller said, Texas A&M is hiring and excluding professors solely due to the physical appearance of their skin or ancestry of their family tree. This is vile and outrageous. Our lawsuit will send tremors through the corrupt institutions of higher learning, making clear that racial discrimination will be met with the righteous legal action in our courts of law.
Ooh, spicy language there. And worth noting that Richard Lowry was at the helm of the Liberty Institute project at UT. There's another great story on our website about that. Make sure to go to thetexan.news and read it, and read this story as well. Hudson, thank you. And I'm glad you were able to kind of, bring us to an end there. I love it.
Thanks.
Okay, let's talk about some tweetery this week, because I really do want to get to the fun topic. So I'm not going to rush us, because we actually have plenty of time, but I really do want to get to the fun topic. Hayden, we're going to start with you. What did you find on Twitter this week?
I noticed on Twitter, I didn't dig this up, but I noticed it. I don't know why I felt the need to clarify that, but Hallie Bradley tweeted a letter from the Arizona Sheriff's Association condemning Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Chris Magnus for his handling of illegal immigration. Quote, just in, Arizona sheriffs issue a vote of no confidence in CBP Commissioner Chris Magnus, saying he's not fit to lead U.S. Customs and Border Protection due to the increase in illegal immigration and illicit drugs coming across the border, end quote. And then some pretty strong language in this letter, which she attached. It includes mention of fentanyl, calling it calling out the deaths of countless individuals and destroying families at a rapid pace, end quote. And it says, since Commissioner Magnus was appointed nearly 9 months ago, we have continued to see an influx of illegal immigrants and illicit drugs across our southern border. What we have not seen is an increased partnership from the federal government, including CBP, to assist local law enforcement in preventing this activity, end quote. So some pretty strong language by another major border state. Texas is not the only one that is struggling with the feds to get illegal immigration under control. And of course, Arizona and Texas share more of a border with Mexico than the Democratic controlled states of California and New Mexico.
Yeah, certainly. Hayden, thank you for that. Hudson, what did you see?
So I'm coming back to the border, and I saw a tweet today, and it was essentially just a trash heap at a private ranch in Eagle Pass, where it's essentially a popular place to cross illegally for migrants, and it's just a crazy sight to see that it's like a dump. It's just like all kinds of trash just being left there, and thankfully a nonprofit came out there and cleaned it all up. But I mean, it's just indicative of kind of the amount of people, the amount of traffic that we're seeing at the southern border, and how it continues to come. And at that same place, those people found a deceased migrant near this pile of trash. And it's just very sad to see that there's a serious humanitarian crisis occurring right now. And like we were talking about, I'm going to have a piece coming out soon about a migrant center in San Antonio. And these people are coming directly from the border to large cities like San Antonio. And they're still having these humanitarian issues where they're not able to find places to stay. There's nowhere for them to live. They're hot and sweltering on the city streets of town because there's nowhere for them to go. And we have our federal lawmakers like Kamala Harris saying that the border is secure. Mm-hmm. When in reality, you see things like this and it's totally the opposite.
Yeah. Well, and it's like there's always unintended consequences of those kinds of decisions that are made, right? And your piece, which I keep hinting at it, we keep hinting at it, but I am excited for folks to get to read it. There's so much out there that is even said by authorities that you have to question and fact check and make sure that it's actually the case about the status of these people coming across the border. And business owners are the ones being, so directly affected in this, that you talk to several business owners. Indeed. I know even your family has kind of seen the repercussions of a lot of this down in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Folks living in the area. It's just very important to report on these issues and know exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. So we're excited for that to come out. Bradley, this is a big pivot. That's why I put you at the end of this section. But what did you see on Twitter this week?
I saw a video of this dad laying on the ground next to a golf ball in his backyard. And according to his wife who was filming it, he likes to go into the backyard whenever they live right next to a country club. And whenever a ball is hit in their yard, he goes out and lays by it to act like
I've seen this video before.
It's
so
I've
funny.
seen it too. It's great. But the video shows this golfer coming up to the yard and seeing the guy laying next to his ball. And he thinks that he hit the guy and he's like not sure what to do.
It's so mean.
But yes, it is totally unrelated to anything Hayden or Hudson said, but that made me laugh this week.
My favorite tweet that you ever talked about on the podcast was this video that was something you could not describe in words. Like it was a piece of furniture that folded into other kinds of furniture, and you attempted to describe it on the podcast when really it was just a video on Twitter that you were trying to describe. I don't think it really did anything for anybody.
Well, you know what?
Whatever.
I have no response to that.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure that we bring up your failures every once in a while.
I was about to say, I just think it's amazing that you were somehow able to morph that into a criticism of Brad.
A friend of mine this week, this is a little bit off, a friend of mine this week said, or sent me a text where she was like, do you remember, because she listened to our podcast every week and I had no idea. And this is like so funny, but she was like, do you remember when Brad, or when you really criticized Brad and then his grandma got mad at you for criticizing her grandson? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I do. And then I realized in response to that, at first, I was like, man, I really should like tone it down. I really need to be nicer to Brad on the pod. That lasted like one podcast.
Yeah.
I think I still have been mean to you this whole time.
Does Grandma still listen?
Oh yeah. You didn't hear this, I'm sure.
Wait, what does she think about our banter? Specifically, it just, am I still being too mean?
I haven't heard about it recently.
Okay.
I calmed her down. I said it's okay.
Okay.
It's all in good fun most of the time.
If there was a podcast where you weren't mean to Brad, I certainly don't remember it.
Yeah.
So I must not have been here that day.
I think after the Hamilton incident, I specifically was like, I have to be more careful. I think that was really it. It was just a very gross miscommunication and a very sad time. And we were genuinely mad at each other after, which, Hayden, it was like...
Which was one of the dumbest things ever to be mad at each other about. It was so stupid,
and I'm very sorry about it, Brad.
I'm still kind of tiffed about it.
Really?
No.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's move on to the fun topic. Hayden.
Why me?
Because you wrote it.
Okay.
You sparked the idea.
Also, Hudson, I hope we were not too mean to you at the beginning of the podcast and ganged up on you about that.
I don't care.
We were teasing you.
Yeah, I understand.
Not. Okay.
Are we going to keep that part?
My grandma's not going to come calling.
Okay. You never know.
I don't even think she knows what a podcast is.
Okay, because we went hard on you, so I'm just making sure that this hazing of the new guy is not.
It's
too
all right.
much.
I'm going to Thundercloud subs after this, so I'll be getting my
drown your sorrows,
eat your feelings.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, Hayden, your fun topic: shopping for clothes, fun or a chore? What is your perspective?
It really depends. I think it can be fun, but as long as what you're looking for, they have your size and it fits right. I think it can be fun, but I was looking at my closet recently and I thought, you know what? I really could use a few new outfits because I haven't gone clothes shopping in a while. So this has been on my mind.
Yeah.
But it can be frustrating because you might find something you like. Like I was shopping at Target a few months ago and I found a really cool denim jacket that I wanted and they didn't have my size.
Ugh.
And I don't want to order it online.
You're trying to bring denim back?
A little bit.
Denim has never not been
I
back.
want to see your denim jacket.
I wanted to buy it. I was about to,
Yeah.
but I couldn't find my size, and I'm leery about buying it online.
Well, Target's website also, as a side note, is awful.
Yeah. So
Not that I've ever tried to buy things from there. I have, and I'm annoyed by it. It's not good. It's a horrible website.
it can be fun.
Yeah.
Like I went clothes shopping. I think right before we went to the GOP convention in Houston, and I got this shirt, and I really like it. It fits really well.
Yeah.
Also, I bought that at Target.
Nice.
But so if you can find something you like in the right size, it can be fun.
And you can keep it for a long time, and it's almost
Yeah.
like insurance of not having to go shopping later.
Right.
You have to shop to not shop.
And if washing it doesn't ruin it either, because some clothes that you buy are just terrible once they're washed and dried. So
Yeah.
you have to bear that in mind as well.
That's very true. Hudson, what do you think?
For me, I'm a 33 waist and a 31 leg, so it's like very difficult for me to find clothes that exactly fit.
In case anybody can find some pants this weekend, just, mail them to the Texan.
Like, let me know where you found
Joe
them.
Hootman might hook you up.
Yeah. Joe Hootman is the best. He sends us so many wonderful gifts to the office.
Winston was chewing that dragon last night, and I thought, that's from Joe.
That's from Joe. I use that blanket every single day I commandeered it immediately. Anyways, I'm sorry. Sorry, Hudson.
So it's kind of difficult for me, but I also don't do much shopping. Most of the clothes that I have are from a long time ago.
How long ago, Hudson?
I have clothes from 8th grade. And for reference, I just graduated from college this year.
Yeah.
And if I do go shopping, it's at REI and Academy.
Nice.
And that's about it.
Those are classic guy places.
I feel
and
like my style hasn't really changed since then. So it's, other than the sizing thing, it's not too bad.
How would you describe your style? I want to make each of you answer
outdoor
this question.
frat guy.
Outdoor frat guy. I feel like that works.
Yeah.
I feel like that Hayden does not want me to ask about his personal style. Hayden gave me a look like, oh boy.
Don't make me answer that question.
Brad, what about you?
I have no idea. So why don't you just...
No, about shopping. Is it a chore or not?
Oh.
See, I got mad at Brad within 2 seconds.
Probably going to throw the same question at me as you did, Hayden.
Yeah, no, I let you guys off the hook. Poor Hudson had to answer.
Well, yes, it is a pain in the butt.
Okay.
Unless you are the standard body size and length, it is a difficult thing to find.
Sounds like they're not very inclusive.
Yeah. We need some more representation.
Yeah.
In the fashion industry. Yeah. No. Yeah, it's difficult.
I just simply cannot.
I don't buy clothes often because.
And if you do, you buy it from 1776.com.
That is not true. But
what's the website?
We went to that website one day because you were talking it up.
Yeah.
They have good stuff. I don't know why you're giving me crap for this.
I'm not. I'm letting our listeners know.
Doing at all now.
Yeah, I know. I actually think a lot of our listeners would love that website, so I think you should tell them what it is.
1776united.com, I think.
1776united.com.
Yeah.
Pulling it up
not
right
sponsored.
now. Yeah, it's good.
Not sponsored.
That's not the only place I shop.
Yeah. But a lot of your t-shirts are from there, I'd say.
I have 3.
Yeah. There you go.
That's a lot.
Okay. But anyways,
a lot out of my
I don't know what the ratio
t-shirts that I have.
or the pie chart of that would be in terms of your total inventory of shirts, but regardless, 3 shirts from one place. Good stuff. I hate shopping. I could not hate it more. If I can avoid them all at all costs, I will do so. I really don't understand why people enjoy walking around and just looking at clothes.
Isn't it exhausting?
Yes, it's so exhausting. And I get so fed up. And part of it, I think, is like residual frustration from being like a lanky. I'm 5'11" and 3/4. I'm very tall. I have super long limbs. And it's like as a teenager, it was so hard to find any clothes that fit. And so that was a very difficult thing. Like I just hated shopping because I couldn't find anything that fit.
Yeah.
And still, like I only have one place I can buy jeans.
Really?
Yeah. Gap. And they have tall and they have long. And I have to get the long one, which is like 4 inches additional at the bottom.
Wow.
Anyway.
It's a
struggle.
I would rather run 3 miles than go shopping. I would be less exhausted after that than shopping.
Yeah.
The whole process isn't fun at all.
Yeah.
If you can, like I said, if you find something that you like, it's fun to get new clothes.
Yes.
But shopping itself is such a chore.
That's a good way to put it.
The greatest Bud Light ad ever focused on shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this guy and he's at a store with his wife. And then all of a sudden, like something hits him and he walks over to this clothes rack, like a circular one. And he opens it up and there's a bunch of guys in there watching football and they have Bud Light, of course. But that if only that were real life, Bud Light, you need to really step up your game because that would be amazing. That would make shopping actually fun.
A little bit.
Yeah. And I mean shopping in air quotes because so I will send that I will tweet that video out tomorrow because it is the greatest.
Because you enjoy it that much.
The greatest Bud Light ad in history.
Okay. I mean, that's totally fair. Yeah, I just really don't like it. I think it's annoying. I think everyone can say this, like not really. They're only like most people are not average height, weight, anything. So shopping for most people, I feel like is probably very annoying. This is my final story. Once I went into a store and I really liked their jeans. This was like 2 months ago. And I went into the store and I really wanted to buy their jeans. And I tried them on. And I knew that they did not have long lengths in store, but they did have long lengths. So I figured I would just get them sized so I knew what size to order and I could just order the long online. I went in, I tried them on. Y'all, I'm not kidding you. The jeans were like supposed to be full length. They went mid-calf. Like mid-calf. To the point where I was like, okay, well maybe the long will be like long enough still. Like maybe it's a very long. I step out and the sales associate girl who's supposed to be like the most like trying to make you buy jeans. I step out and she just went, "Oh girl, I'm sorry." That's all she said. It's like, "Oh girl, I am sorry." And I was like,
there is nothing more frustrating than putting on a pair of jeans that you think is going to fit and then it doesn't, or it's too tight,
or that you have high hopes for.
Right. And it looks really good and you're like, "Oh, I hope that fits." And then it doesn't. And then you just rip it off and just throw it on the ground in the fitting room, and you're like,
and leave it up.
Son of a, I'm done. I'm going home.
Oh, anyways, and I asked, well, with the long, I can order a long online, like these fit otherwise, and she goes, oh girl, it's only 2 inches longer. She was like, that ain't gonna fix anything. Anyways, I could have bought capris that day, but I did not. Okay, that's my final choice. Story. Thank you. Well, folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for just sticking around for our banter. If you made it this long, we appreciate it. We will catch you next week, and thank you for listening. Thank you to everyone for listening. If you enjoy our show, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want more of our stories, subscribe to The Texan at thetexan.news. Follow us on social media for the latest in Texas politics, and send any questions for our team to our mailbag by DMing us on Twitter or shooting an email to editor@thetexan.news. We are funded entirely by readers and listeners like you, so thank you again for your support. Tune in next week for another episode of our weekly Roundup. God bless you, and God bless Texas.